Hi there. Yeah, I can, Anton. How are you doing? Yeah, apologies. I was just having a little technical difficulties there getting on, purely on my side though. But yeah, all well on my side. No, carry on, carry on. Yep, all good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
can hear you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Startup Fundraising Q&A 140. If you're tuning in via the live streams, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please be aware that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there. So you would have to join us here live on Microsoft Teams. The quickest way to do that is to go to our website, startup2scaleup.club. There, you'll be able to find today's session, which is Startup Fundraising Q&A 140. You then click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to your email with today's Microsoft Teams call. It's audio only, by the way. And once you get that link to your email, then all you have to do is click on it and join us. When you're here, though, you might want to ask us questions, and the best way to do that is to drop your question in the chat. We then give you the mic, and you can ask our team. It makes for a much better conversation to have you here rather than us trying to answer questions that are being sent in writing. In terms of today's questions, they can be on anything to do with fundraising. Whether you want to know when's the right time to reach out to investors, how much you should ask for, perhaps you might want help with your pitch deck or valuations, or maybe how to prepare your data room and how to prepare for due diligence and all that jazz. There are literally no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. You see, unfortunately, over 90% of startups fail. And the top 3 reasons for that are 1, market fit, 2, running out of money, and 3, not having the right people. And that second reason is what we're here to address today. When we run out of money, some of us don't have endless pockets or rich mamas and daddies or aunties and uncles. Therefore, we have to go out there and raise, whether that's a loan, crowdfunding, VC, angel, whatever it may be. And this is what will make your journey smoother. So, by the way, if your questions are not on fundraising, then please save them for the other events we run. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law, and third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. That all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and you can RSVP to any of them via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. And actually, when you go there, you might want to join our WhatsApp community. It's groups of fellow founders like yourselves, investors, and operators that you can join. And the icons there are at the top and bottom of our website. But now, without further ado, we'll go to some quick introductions. Then we'll ask the panel to give us their biggest do's and don'ts when it comes to early stage fundraising. And then we'll start getting some questions from yourselves. So without further ado, my name is Anton Call. I'm an Albanian in London working with startups. Normally, right after they get investment, I embed within their teams and help them hire and keep the right people. I also do some growth advisory work with a few other startups and accelerators, and lately I've been helping some angels and family offices with their due diligence and assessment. We'll go to Archie, then Dan, then Jonathan.
Hi there, Archie Thomason here from Varesco Group. We set up Varesco Group around a year ago, focusing on advisory for early stage companies. That will vary all the way to fundraising, internal operations, even interim roles as CFO, for example. Aside from our advisory, we have capital management side where we are fundraising currently for a farmland fund, £200 million fund, and we're currently at 72 million and looking to deploy soon. Previous background quickly, previously had a small family office, VC, made a number of investments into climate tech and agri-food, so ag tech. That's where my passion is, sustainability, and that's where I have a little bit of knowledge, but not a huge amount, but more than other sectors. And as a result, yeah, really interested to hear any startup ideas or progress anyone's been making, and happy to help. Thanks, Anton.
Yes, Dan.
Hi, Anton.
I can hear you, Dan. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you caught us coming. Yeah, I'm Dan Ballin. I'm the Chief Executive of Ideas Crucible. I've spent 25 years capital raising, working with startups as a VC, as an angel, and we currently work with over about 800 investors, 200 actively. We've got mandates to invest. We specialize in fintech and deep tech and IP-rich companies from about sort of C to Series B. Yeah, that's us.
Much appreciated, Dan. Jonathan?
Hi, I'm John. Recently just finished deploying out of a upside down proof of concept fund, investing in highly talented individuals. Currently also looking at venture partner roles at the moment, but happy to utilize some of the stuff I've learned to help everybody out.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you to all 3 of you for joining us today. Perhaps be nice to get some do's and don'ts that you've seen out there that may be helpful to founders knowing. So whether you've seen things go wrong or whether you've seen things done exceptionally well, perhaps if you can bring to the fore one each, so one do and one don't, please, gentlemen. Perhaps if we can start with Dan, then Archie, and then Jonathan, please.
So yeah, this down here, yeah, do be prepared. Do make sure you're planned. Make sure you've got clear funding milestones that you can articulate to your investor when you're pitching to them. The number one skill you need as a founder, as I learned myself, is very much sales, where you're selling to an investor, selling to a customer, selling to a partner at the end of the day. Make sure they're tuned and honed and you've got those in your team at the end of the day. Do have a great pitch deck, tell a compelling story, but equally keep it concise, visually appealing, and make sure you've got a really good brand out there. Make sure you've got good product market fit, and be prepared for any question. So practice for those due diligence questions, because that's when it'll come down. Whether it be about the financial statements, the cap tables, the legals, all the basics at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate down there. Absolutely, preparation and a compelling narrative is one of, if not the most important part of fundraising. But just to add on a little bit, I would say fundraising, once you, let's say, have this compelling story, you've built up your company to a certain stage, you need external equity. It's not quite as simple as just suddenly going out and speaking to as many investors as possible. I would plan the process in which you're going to, almost do a pre-marketing phase, go to certain investors, perhaps ones you have a good relationship with, or even other investors who are not even in your sector, and have their impressions on your pitch, on really what are the pitfalls of what you're doing, so you don't make the same mistakes for the wider investor community. And those most successful fundraisers and startup companies I've worked with are the ones that have done so. Thank you.
Yes, Jonathan.
Don't fundraise for the sake of fundraising. And yeah, do think of fundraising as hiring money to get what you need to get done faster, rather than out of a desperation kind of attitude.
Well, thank you very much to all three of you. Those are some really good points to bear in mind for the founders. Just before we start taking questions, I guess a quick reminder to the people following us on the live streams. This is Startup Fundraising Q&A. We do this every Thursday, 12 to 1 p.m, where we seek to help founders like yourselves with whatever questions you may have when trying to fundraise in order to take your business to the next stage. There are no wrong questions and there's no need to be shy. However, those of you that are on the live streams, unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions there live. So you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only, and there's links on the live streams. But if you can't access those links, simply go to our website, startup2scaleup.club. Look for today's session, which is Startup Fundraising Q&A 140. You click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to your email, and through that link, you can join us here on Microsoft Teams when you're here. And for those of you that are already here, if you've got questions, then simply drop them in the chat. We'll then give you the mic, and you can ask our panel whatever help you need with, or whatever ideas you need help with, rather, shall I say. For those of you that are here, by the way, and also those that are on the live streams, it might be a good idea, just post your LinkedIn in the chat, and maybe a quick sentence about who you are and what you're doing, and maybe where you're based. That might be a good idea to just everyone get to know each other. On the other hand, if your questions today are not on fundraising, please save them for the other conversations we run. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's legal. Third Friday of each month, normally, is finances, although this month we'll have to push it for next week because unfortunately I've got to go to a funeral tomorrow and I can't get out of it. So we are going to be here now, for the next 44 minutes. And my advice would be not to leave it for last second. We will now go on to the first question. This was sent in. It's a B2B SaaS platform for HR compliance. They're based in Bristol. She's at seed stage. The current situation, I don't know why, but this sounds familiar. The current situation failed to secure seed funding and considering a lean model to extend runway while seeking alternative capital. So my question to your panel is, our B2B SaaS for HR compliance was unable to close our seed round and we're exploring a leaner operating model as a contingency. What specific cost-cutting strategies, such as temporary workforce reductions or pausing non-essential development, would best sustain the company's growth potential? Would reaching out to strategic partners for revenue sharing arrangements be advisable as a stopgap, or would this signal weakness to future VCs? This is a bit of a growth question, but there is some VC, some fundraising aspect to it too, obviously. How about this? Let's start with Don, then we go to Dan, and then we go to Archie, please.
Yeah, I think this is a question you have to answer yourself, not us, because I think you know more than anybody else what functions are the most important to your business and what you need and what resources that you need at minimum to sustain your most important functions to be able to sustain and grow your revenue. So I think you kind of have to reverse the question and go back on yourself and be very, very self-aware as to like what is necessary and what is not necessary. And I think if you do a lot of like, if you spend probably an hour, 2 hours, like really, really diving deep into your budget, I think you'll find that there's a lot of things that you can actually cut and not have to destroy anything like too core of a functionality.
Here. Actually, I think
Yeah,
I'd love to know is why did it fail? Were they not able to get the money, or that's an
yeah, I'd love
interesting
to
one.
see that in
Anyway,
the
they're
chat
not
actually
able.
on Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, this will come very much down to the individual startup. I mean, the art of running any startup, even the big Silicon Valley startups, is to run lean. That is one of the advantages you can do as a startup. So it's something that you want to be doing from day one, really, at the end of the day. Although sometimes people think running a startup is all about getting investment, it's not. It's just an important part of it. So you have to be always very conscious that costs, operational capex and opex are always going to be there. I mean, if you've got key staff out there and you as soon as you start having to lay off people, it is always tough on morale at the end of the day. Maybe consider switching them from maybe from being salaried to some sort of equity or options or incentives on securing that investment. Same goes for your partners and your costs. Obviously, if you've got big ticket costs like office and operational costs, maybe consider scaling down or remote working. Likewise, power is a big cost, co-working is a big cost. Typically, my experience, if you've got fractionals, is they're pretty understanding. If particularly if you're transparent with everyone else and tell them that you'll bring them back or reduce their hours, bring them back once funding comes in. So yeah, you maybe want to move some of those FTEs down to part-times and some down to fractional, and incentives when the money comes in at the end of the day. A lot of this is going to come down to why you didn't close the round in the first place at the end of the day. It's one of the hardest things to do as a founder, because being a founder, you're passionate, but sometimes you're going to make a judgment call on whether it might be best to, is this going to work? Are we going to close this round in the future? Maybe cutting your losses and moving on to something else, or a pivot maybe is the approach to be taking at the end of the day. If you've got a good team, pull it in, work with them on the solution. Don't do it in isolation. Find some good advisors, find some mentors, Because if you're not getting funding, you know, and only 1 in 100 startups do, then you might be one of those 99, and you've got to figure out why. So don't try and keep flogging a dead horse, as they say, is my view.
I couldn't have said it better than Dan just then. Just to reiterate, mainly the point on actually wages and the cost there. If you're a founder and the other people in your company are shareholders, it needs to almost come down to you. In my belief of reducing salaries before you make people redundant, make the sacrifice personally, even in your personal life, and hopefully that will pay off. But to go to the root cause of it, again, as everyone said previously, you need to eliminate the issues that resulted in the lack of funding or the seed round falling through.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's quite dire. It's less than 1% of people that get VC funding. So I'm glad the theme here is that raising money, it's not what startups are all about. That is often the field that we need, but it's about getting your company in order. And you've got to do two things. One, you've got to find a way to keep the lights on to the next stage. And two, you also have to remember that if you do go for investment, they're going to ask, where's your traction? So it's not just about keeping the lights on. You've got to get some traction. And unfortunately, you might even have to be braver and smarter than I was with quite a few of my startups. I stop flogging a dead horse if you see that this isn't actually working. So it might be your product / service rather than just the fundraising climate at the moment. So can't remember, I think it was Dan that mentioned, go out there, get some advisors that know their stuff and listen to them and hear what they've got to say, because maybe it might be worth to look in the mirror. Rightio, we now have 37 minutes to go. This is Startup Fundraising Q&A. We're here to help startups with whatever questions you may have as you go on your fundraising journey, whether it's about investor outreach, pitch deck, data room valuations, equity, due diligence, grants, angel, VC, CVC, crowdfunding, exits, and all that jazz. There literally is no wrong question, and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. If you're tuning in via the live streams, please remember we're unable to monitor your questions there. If you want to ask us questions, then you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. Quickest way to do that is go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club. Look for today's session, just scroll down to Startup Fundraising Q&A 140. Click join. It's a quick registration. That gets you a link to your email, and through that link, you can then join us here on Microsoft Teams. When you're here, and for those who are here already, if you do want to ask us anything, just drop your question in the chat. We'll then give you the mic and you can ask our team. If, by the way, your questions are not on fundraising, save them for the other conversations we do. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's legal, and third Friday of each month, it's finances. Apart from this month, that to next week, they're all 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and you can RSVP to any of them via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, you might also want to join our WhatsApp community. It's groups of founders, investors, and operators that you can join, top and bottom of our website. There's a link, an icon, a WhatsApp icon you can click and join. Now we'll go on to our next question. Okay, so it's a sustainable fashion subscription box. My God, okay. In Edinburgh, they're at seed stage. I'd love to know what a sustainable fashion subscription box is there. Anyway, the current situation is that this eco-friendly fashion startup plans to raise seed funding via crowdfunding, which will act as both capital and brand loyalty strategy. The question we have is that our sustainable fashion subscription box is leveraging crowdfunding to raise our seed round, but we want to ensure that crowd investors support rather than hinder future Series A. What structural terms like non-voting shares or dividend restrictions are commonly used in the UK crowdfunding campaigns to avoid conflicts with later institutional rounds? Should we consider restrictions on investor voting to ensure operational independence through future funding? I think this is very simple. Just go to a reputable crowdfunding platform and they should sort this out for you. If they don't, they're not worth their salt. But let's hear what the investment people have to say. Let's start with Daniel, then John, then Archie, please.
So I suspect when they mean a sustainable fashion subscription box, it's one of these companies that curates pre-used clothing to meet your fashion and style at the end of the day. I might be wrong. It'd be good to articulate that a little bit clearer, but there's a group of about a dozen of these companies who effectively will deliver you the latest on fashion, typically focus at the moment on either kids or on typically women's fashion at the end of the day. So trying to escape from the a fast fashion world to the kind of I'll have it next month as opposed to next week kind of thing. So and to me, I guess I think crowdfunding is a great way. It's very good for sustainable investment raising at the end of the day. If you're in Edinburgh, then you might want to go with a UK crowdfunding company like Cedars or something, which does very well. But I think this, as you're not developing a product, something like a Kickstarter is probably not very relevant. The key thing you need to make sure is what are you doing here that is different than any other sustainable fashion subscriptions? Because at the end of the day, whether you're crowdfunding, angel funding, VC funding, or any other kind of equity investment, they're looking for some sort of novelty at the end of the day. Maybe it's the way it's shipped to you in an environmental way. Maybe it's the way it's packaged at the end of the day. Maybe it's the AI engine that finds the kind of clothes that you're looking. But be careful of just becoming a Me Too in this space, because there's a lot of competitors in this space at the moment. And they're not making a lot of money at the end of the day because they've got to collect the items, they've got to package the items, they've got to select the items. So you need to make sure you're doing it in a way that's quite clever. I saw one of the questions on structural terms. I think most of that really is probably pretty restricted, given you're doing crowdfunding, because the kind of voting and shares and stuff, you can tweak and edit and stuff, the term sheets, but a lot of that will be templated. If it's a seed stage, keep it simple vanilla shares at the end of the day, non-voting rights, non-board rights. You just want a bit of seed funding to get going at the end of the day.
Thanks, Dan. I think the next one was Archie, wasn't it? Archie?
Apologies for that. Yeah, really interesting sounding business. I understand your decision to or interest in going more towards crowdfunding than VC, or probably VC would be the alternative. Creating brand loyalty there. Just to reiterate again what Anton said, Cedars, Crowdcube, others are good structures, basically a nominee structure, and that keeps the cap table clean. Make sure you're sort of limiting certain voting rights, and include some drag-alongs as well. And yeah, an alternative could be, especially if you're in Edinburgh, going rather than crowdfunding, an alternative in essence almost is crowdfunding, is the angel syndicates in Scotland. There are a number of them. That may also open some doors as a result of high net worths connections in the sector. I know there are a number in Edinburgh. They meet often, and there's some great grant funding also from the Scottish government. So look at Scottish Enterprise, Kelvin Capital, EOS, Tri Capital. There are dozens as well. Perhaps do that alongside. But yeah, best of luck.
Just before we go to Jonathan, did you say tag along or drag along? And whichever you mentioned, explain to our audience what it means, please, and why did you advise that, Archie?
Yeah, so I said drag along. That basically means, well, you can put certain information in. That means they can't block a future sale or perhaps an institutional exit. I've seen in the past that in the inverse, actually, that people insist in some of their term sheets that there is a sale within 5 years, would be the opposite, which actually can harm sometimes a company if it's not the right buyer. And the previous bit was also nominees, Crowdcube, etc., purely to do with keeping the cap table clean. The reason why that's important is for future raises, and today if it just says seeders, Crowdcube, that's absolutely fine. But if you had a selection of 10 different high net worths, or 10 or hundreds of different individuals, then things get complicated and it doesn't look good. The amount it's diluted amongst individual people.
Indeed, thank you very much for that, Jonathan.
Not much to add. I mean, everyone's pretty much said everything what I was gonna add in as well.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm not repeating myself, but two things probably worth mentioning. For what you're doing, again, assuming we got it right, what you meant by that fashion subscription box, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap. But if you get it right, that can be a brilliant marketing exercise as well. So actually, if you've got what it takes, why not? The only advice I could give you here that I think has not been mentioned is you ought to be prepared beforehand to get some people to be ready to commit. And what I've seen most of the successful crowdfunding campaigns is that the absolute majority of them have already got at least half of the money committed, so that literally the moment their campaign goes live on whichever platform, those commitments go in and invest that money. That way you gain momentum in order to attract other investors. So that's something to bear in mind. Right here, we've got 27 minutes to go. I think we can go through a few more questions. I thought I saw one of the people here try and type a question or something in the chat. Please don't be shy. Feel free to drop your question and would be more than happy to give you the mic. Okay, for startup loans backed by British business banks, such as the Virgin Money startup loan, what happens if the business is unable to repay part of the loan? Are the directors personally liable? And could this affect their credit rating? That's a very good question. I will give you the mic, Sunil, whilst the team, where are we? Where is Sunil? Okay. Do you want to test if the mic works, Sunil? Can you hear me, Sunil?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I was on mute.
Good man. No, that's cool.
Yeah, so I haven't actually taken the loan, but I just want to look at worst case scenarios. What happens if for any reason, the business doesn't do too well? And I just want to know, what the, how will it affect the directors?
That is a very good question. And I actually would love it if you can also join us next Friday, because now we have to change it. I can't do startup finances tomorrow, but we'll do it next Friday. So I'd love if you can join us on that as well. But for now,
okay.
Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, and then I'll pass you over to my panelists?
Yeah, so my name is Sunil Krishnan. I'm trying to start up a business related to improving the information that's actually available for company boards. Because there are many instances where they have decks of anything up to about 1,000 pages on some NHS boards, for example. And so I want to basically have that in an electronic format where the key information is actually available to them. And so I want to basically create that product, and I'm at the very early stages of that.
Thank you very much. Sunil, I think that is a brilliant business to have. Although personally, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, I would think, why can't these people just simply have an API into ChatGPT or something like that and literally just feed all that information to them, i.e., in terms of your product market fit. But let's hear from, I think Dan has unmuted.
I love the problem of the board. Anyone who's had to prepare board papers will know it's like you almost start preparing one set of board papers at the beginning of 1 month for the next month if you're having like every 10 months, particularly if you're a large kind of FTSE company, that even if you're doing them every couple of months on some of those smaller scale ups, like for instance I'm on Ned for, it's a marathon task because you got to collate it and you got to get, and people are submitting things late and altering it, and you got to present it and figure out what's going in and not. It is a big job at the end of the day, as well as tracking all minutes and actions and everything else and finances. I think there's a great AI play. I do believe there's something more than ChatGPT you could do here, or a layer on top of it. I think there's a really good problem, and I think that it's the kind of thing that I can see mid-tier and large companies really investing in as well. I guess my question to Sunil before I go on is, why go for a British business bank loan versus maybe angel investment or family and friends or crowdfunding or something? To answer your question, by the way, the BBA, the British Business Bank, does put directors liable for this. So, but I mean, it's a good way if you want to get some cash flow and you believe you've got. But typically, if you've got no revenue coming in from customers, you are going to be in a situation where you will have to pay that loan back in a personal capacity, which might be perfectly fine if you've, let's say, got a liquidity event, like you're selling a house or second home, or you're expecting some money in from, but you will at the end of the day be liable of paying that business bank as well, paying underwriting that loan at the end of the day as a director. Unlike, for instance, if you would take something like venture debt out under a limited company situation, where you're on the unlikely situation, or on the hopefully it's an unlikely situation that the company was to liquidate, that you or yourself would not be liable, but the company would be. That was a mixture of questions and answers. I'm interested to know why you want to go down a business bank loan, Sunil.
No, that was just one of the options I was looking at, and because I'm right now I'm at the stage where I'm actually looking at different options. Because just to let you know how this came about, because I'm actually working with the University of Bedfordshire as well as the University of Cambridge, looking at 4 different topics related to boards and board governance, and one of them was this, about the board deck and how to make that more efficient. And one of the things we were looking at initially was grants, but then we found out the success rate of grants is like 2 to 3%, and the amount of effort that needs to go in to get grants is actually a hell of a lot. So I'd also be interested in hearing if any of you have experience, especially if you have a better success rate than the 2 to 3% that I've heard from many people.
That's a very good point, Nils. Go on, Dad.
I was going to say, grant writing has become, and it's changing, particularly in something like Innovate UK, who are currently going through a shift in the rules at the moment. There are some people that are winning grants quite regularly, and they're typically actually the larger companies who've got R&D arms, and they are employing professional grant writers, typically paying £20,000-30,000 to get this grant written, to make sure they've got all the metrics and buzzwords and reviewed, and make sure it's totally fitting with the kind of grant scheme that's going at the end of the day. So there are some that actually do very well with grants. I work in deep tech. I work with a lot of university spin-outs and companies similar. And it's not unusual for some of my companies to have 500,000, £1 million worth grant. But there's no quick money. There's no guarantee at the end of the day. And you've got to put 6 or 7 grants in, and you've got to basically need money to spend money at the end of the day, like anything with a startup. So grants work well, particularly if you're doing something where there's good kind of USPs and some know-how. And at the end of the day, for something like this, which is more like a SaaS service or something else, probably less applicable for grants at the end of the day, probably better suited, if not for an angel investment round, maybe if you've got some customers that are lining up, some boards, maybe they'd be interested in co-funding you with this if they could get a free service or something. So maybe going out to potential customers at the end of the day and seeing if they would willing to build a little bit of a cooperative at the end of the day might be an interesting way to kind of do it. But make sure you've got a clear, compelling story. If you've got 4 different ideas, then it's probably a bit too early. I'd maybe beaver away, spend 6-9 months, get something ready with a compelling story, with a good product market fit and some interested kind of traction and like letters of intent from people who will be able to do it at the end of the day.
Oh, no, that's actually really interesting, especially about the potential customers. And going back to the 4 ideas, the other 3 are actually just pure research. So that's totally separate. And I'm actually going via the universities to actually get funding through, you know, their normal sources, Wellcome Trust, etc. So that is separate, and there's no product out of those. It will just be a paper. Whereas this, this started off as a research topic, but I want to create a product, and then the research will come afterwards in terms of looking at its effectiveness, and then there will be a paper that comes out of this. But going to the potential customers, but I can speak to existing NEDs that I know, and that's actually a very good idea. So thanks for that.
Best of luck.
Well,
thank you.
Welcome, and thank you very much. Sunil, a couple of things before in case Jonathan and Archie want to add anything. I think this has got legs, but what I would do if I were you, I would sit down and work out roughly what it costs for you to have a minimum viable product, something that actually companies can start using, and maybe not have all the bells and whistles that you eventually want it to have, but at least that minimal stuff. Work out really well what is it that it will cost you to do that. Try to be as cheap and frugal as you possibly can, and then kind of from that point, what I would do 2 things. I would focus on accelerators and angels, and maybe even make a list. I don't know, 100 angels and however many accelerators. And when you rank those angels, put at the top, at number 1, put the angel that you would most likely like to work with. And then you start reaching out from the bottom, from the least likely angel. They still all need to be relevant, by the way, to that field. But at least by the time you get to the top, you would have perfected your pitch. You would have learned so much so that you can literally drop them dead when you get to the top. That's what I would do. And I really like Dan's idea in terms of potential customers. And actually a good way to do that is to reach out and to say to them, look, this is what I'm working on. And I'd like to pick your brains on, you know, what we should build into this so that it is valuable to you. Personally, I don't know whether your plans are to start charging the NEDs for doing this or the actual companies.
They will be the companies.
There you go. So then maybe drop the NEDs, go directly either to agencies that do a lot of NED work, or go to companies that traditionally use a lot of NEDs, and maybe even the VCs that would kind of somehow often get involved in helping startups find NEDs. So go to the ones that will pay the money, basically. That's the idea, and just reach out to them via LinkedIn. Jonathan, to add anything here?
Not from my side. Sounds like a very, very interesting business, but nothing to add.
Yeah, just watch the terms of any capital that you want to take, and make sure that whatever capital you take aligns with the direction that you want to take your business in the long term.
Brilliant.
And
thank you very much. I've actually picked up quite a few really good points. Thank you.
Very welcome. Sunil, are you techie by background, or what is your background?
My background is actually investment banking, even though within there I did start on the techie side. And so I'm actually quite comfortable with using AI, and I've used that to build, like the wireframe, etc. So I've done quite a lot of the work myself. But yeah, I do originally come from a tech background, even though I've then concentrated more on business change and digital transformation.
One thing to add, by the way, is to check out the competitors, because there are companies with board management platforms out there, but I don't know how good they are.
Yeah, I have actually looked at them. I mean, there's one in the States that's actually particularly good, and so I do know where are the gaps that I need to address, as well as one or two companies here. So yeah, I have actually looked at them. Thank you.
Very cool. Well done. By the way, Sunil, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. If we can find some time for a 20-minute call, if you think I can add any value for free, obviously, on this call, just feel free to reach out. And if you've questions you think I may have answers to, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Right, Gio. Now we've got 14 minutes to go. I think we can go to one more question. Not sure if I answered this, did I? No. Okay. Tech for Good founder in Brighton, pre-seed, first-time founder. I'm working on an app to help low-income families track household expenses and manage debt. How do I structure my pitch to attract impact investors who prioritize social returns without compromising on financial returns? That's an interesting one. Let's start with Jonathan, then Archie, then Dan, please. Do you want to go ahead, Archie?
Yeah, I'll crack on. I would say actually that the pitch shouldn't be much different to how a pitch is usually. The others in the team may have a different view, but I sort of think, firstly, as an investor, I believe this would be you would actually be looking for impact investors. They ultimately need you and your company to survive and thrive in order to make a social impact. And so it's generally at the latter end of a deck is you bring up some more financials, returns, forecasts, etc. But critical to this, and is always the case in pitches, is the narrative, the story, which comes at the start, the problem of I'm just looking, household expenses, managing debt for such people in low income thresholds, and so creating an emotional hook there, a good narrative and a story for people to understand that there's a real need for change.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just comment on that and agree that I totally agree there in terms of the fact that you still need to make sure that this is going to generate a profit. Social impact investors are looking for causes which are going to really support the environment, sustainability, governance, education, key areas, but they're still expecting a good return on investment. It's just something that to them it's a double whammy in that they help the world, help the people, and equally help their bank balance at the end of the day. So don't get the idea that social impact investors are willing to maybe take a small return on investment. They still expect a profitable, successful business at the end of the day. If you're really that is going to just still, so that's going to be really important to them. So maybe you need to reevaluate, given the way I read this, that maybe is a equity investment the best vehicle for you. Maybe this will be better as a social enterprise or a charity or some sort of cooperative. If you don't, because you need to make sure at the end of the day you're going to have a 6, 7, 8 times kind of multiplier return on investment at some point when the company is sold or bought out or further investments come on at the end of the day. So something to take in consideration at the end of the day. If you've got a service which is helping low income, you need to figure out who your customers are. Maybe it's the merchants they're working with, the banks, the mobile phones, whatever. People with low income aren't usually able to pay services. So if you're going to go for a financial inclusion, there are some particular investors who are really interested in this space. and it's an area where you might be able to sell in B2B to get as opposed to get B2B to C, as opposed to kind of B2C, so to speak.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I got it. And then computer just did something. I think my answer to that is, I think you have to figure out and really understand the impact investment firm properly. And so I think that would be discovered on future conversations, right? Because I think there's usually two types. I think there's the type that takes the impact definition a little bit more broadly, and then will invest in all right, I still prioritize returns, but at the same time, things that positively contribute to society. And then you have your other category that's obsessed with the UN SDGs, and then that's like a completely different ball game where almost some of them I think are more obsessed with the UN SDGs than their actual returns, which is hilarious. So I think really understand what that impact investment firm is looking for, and then evaluate honestly whether or not it's a right fit for you.
Indeed, thank you very much. And the only thing I would like to add, I hope I'm not repeating stuff already, is to look at their current portfolios. So look at the companies they've already invested, and then you'll be able to know or get an idea as to how impactful that fund wants to be or is. I think that would be a good indication, or even perhaps reach out to the founders in their current portfolio even before you approach them and say, this is what I'm working on, can I pick your brains? And then if things go well, you can ask them, would you mind introducing me to them? And guess what? The likelihoods of you get an investment from a VC, if you compare warm intro, especially from a portco, a company already in the portfolio, to being called, please don't quote me on this, but I've recently read that it's something like 4,000 times more likely to get investments if you go with a company that they're investing in already. So last question, we've got 8 minutes, is senior living tech founder. That's an interesting one. They're in London, seed stage, senior care specialist. Oh God, I misunderstood it. All right. We've developed a platform that enhances communication between care homes and families. We're considering corporate VC funding from health insurance firms. What potential conflicts should I be aware of when partnering with corporates that might have competing interests? Well, why can't you bleeding be here? If you're not here for us to ask you follow-ups, I'm not sure we can be really helpful. Anyway, I wish I exactly knew what you're trying to do in terms of enhancing communication, because this could be all sorts. If you're just thinking, for you to be able to talk to them and vice versa, this can be done via a video call or whichever way, and emails, right? I really don't know what to make of this, but I thought it was interesting enough. Let's start with Archie, then we go to Jonathan, then Dan, please. Any thoughts on this?
It's probably, well, it's not my expertise or experience previously to offer advice in terms of what to have in term sheets and actual commercially what that would mean for you. Would you be able to go to other corporates, other companies? But in terms, and something I have had experience in, is a particular cleaning company, well known, having quite a large shareholding of one company I've been working with. As a result, that was around 40% ownership. That has made it very hard to fundraise. Having such a large amount of equity in a company, and in particular startup, seems on the surface to look like a form of control from said company, even though they're almost a passive investor, ones that don't have voting rights even on the board. it still gives off the wrong optics. So in terms of the amount of investment you take on and the percentage stake that this company, this corporate VC take, sorry, the health insurance firm take, be careful there. Try and make sure that you, as a founder, still have the majority and have control over the company fundamentally. But I'll leave it to someone else in the panel to answer in more depth.
Any thoughts, Jonathan?
What's the question again?
Sorry, let me read it. It's in the chat. So, senior living tech founder in London, seed stage. They're a senior care specialist by background, and goes on to say, we've developed a platform that enhances communication between care homes and families. We're considering corporate VC funding from health insurance firms. What potential conflicts should I be aware of when partnering with corporates that might have competing interests?
Yeah, I think it's different for every CVC. I think you just have to. I think there's two things. First, you really you go online, you really research kind of like what this organization's all about, and like you can generally quickly figure out like what is the end game for them, and then you figure out where you imagine yourself fitting into that end game. I don't imagine this is going to be stuff that they reveal on a call. I think you're just going to have to do a lot of your own research, go in CVC by CVC, and figuring out what their end game is each individually, and being able to be prepared based off of that.
I mean, I think this is a super interesting area. I was involved with an iPad tool to support people working with Carers UK. I'd also speak with. They've done a lot of work on this. You'd also speak to the likes of Carers Trust, Age UK, who've always looked at this. For anyone who's dealing with an elderly family member, even before they get in the home, the idea of communicating them, particularly if they're not particularly good with technology, means there's been a lot of apps that have been created in this whole area, from pill reminders right down to kind of dumbed down Skype interfaces kind of things to make it very easy, particularly people who've got, let's say, arthritis and struggle with small buttons and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of software tools out there now, One Touch and various others, to be targeted for the more senior citizen. But the idea you can have a communication between the care home and the carer and the caree is, to me, a really interesting area, particularly as people are now managing their finances, realizing there's a very good chance they could be spending 10, 20, 25 years in various forms of sheltered, either a home, sheltered accommodation, or you have a carer visit, or you're in a care home. Whether your customer is going to be a health insurance is interesting. It's far better set up in the US for this space for the carers, where they've got kind of annuity plans for care homes. But some of the kind of insurance companies, I think Saga has a division, and various others have set up specifically for care homes. Life insurance might be worth considering as well at the end of the day. I wouldn't be too hooked up at the moment when you're having the other discussions about conflicts of interest, because this is something that I think you can manage. Just make sure you've got fair and equal term sheets on the end of the day. I mean, be aware of it, but I think having conversations with these kind of people to see if they're willing to invest is good. It does come down to the point that was mentioned before. Each individual CVC has a different view. Some are willing to, quite happy to be a minority and play nicely with everyone. Others might be a little bit more funny if they're gonna be also a customer and an investor. I think a CVC though is actually quite an interesting area. So I think it's a line of inquiry I'd be quite tempted to follow up with. But make sure you capture requirements, speaking with those that work with all the carers. And there's lots of stakeholders, and Carers UK and Carers Trust is Red Star, Age UK is another, for instance, as well.
Right, so do some research. And by the way, another thing I would add is speak to some lawyers, find a lawyer to talk to them about this in more detail, because I'm sure they can give you some good feedback in terms of what is going on out there at the moment. We are now at the top of the hour, which means it's time to wrap this up. So perhaps we'd love to get some parting words from our panel, who've been amazing today, as always. Maybe we can start in the same order that they joined initially. So perhaps we can go with Archie, then I think it was Dan, and last but not least, Jonathan, please.
Parting words. Finally, I'll probably just say work hard. There's no free lunch, as the expression goes. Work hard, and you'll get results. Always be polite. You never know what when you'll next encounter someone and when you'll next need them. So yeah, keep your head down, be dedicated, and conduct yourself well.
Thank you very much, Archie. Dan, please.
Yeah, my parting word is you've already started by doing the right thing, by seeking the advice of people who've either been there as founders or investors and generally mentors. That's kind of going to be a going journey, and the kind of people you take advice from will change and shift as you scale, you internationalize, you grow, as you have other issues with all the pains that come with being a small company to being a large company, like HR and talent at the end of the day. So keep listening, keep asking, find people you can trust, and build that network at the end of the day. It is hard work, you will get knocked back, but it can be very rewarding at the end of the day, and you have a great opportunity to make a great success for yourself, for your team at the end of the day, provide some great people, some great jobs, and hopefully grow the economies, and hopefully maybe have some social impact on the way. Best of luck to all those. It's a hard journey, but boy, it's so exciting and so worth it.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much for that. Huge thanks to everyone that tuned in today. Not so much to those of you that couldn't be bothered to join us live, but especially those of you that were here with us on Microsoft Teams. That is much appreciated. As for those that tuned in via the live streams, just remember, unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions live. So next time, if you do want to ask our panels, you'll need to join us here on Microsoft Teams. The best way to do that is that you can RSVP to any future session via our site, startuptoscaleup.club. You find your preferred event, click join, quick registration, and then you get an email with a link invite, basically. Now, just a couple of things. Number one, we run 6 regular sessions. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising. Second Friday of each month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of each month, it's UK startup finances. Although this week, i.e. tomorrow, we won't do finances because it's been pushed to next week, so next Friday. Second bit I want to remind you all is that we've got some amazing WhatsApp communities out there and some great groups of founders, investors, and operators. So if you want to join them, simply go to our site, startuptoscaleup.club. At the top and bottom of that site, you'll see some WhatsApp icons. You can tune in and join in. Now, as far as my parting words are concerned, just remember the startup journey can be both exciting but also quite challenging. So try to have some fun in the meantime and be kind to yourself and everyone else for that matter too. Otherwise, huge thanks again. Have a great weekend. See you all hopefully for Startup Talent Q&A on Monday, and God bless you. Bye-bye for now.